you've been studying nonstop for the LSAT and not getting anywhere, it's probably time to stop. Hi, I'm John McCarty, founder of Odyssey Test Prep. So many LSAT test takers fall into the trap of continuous study sessions, believing that more time spent studying equals better results. However, what they may not realize is that study fatigue can hinder their progress. And in today's episode, we're going to challenge the idea of nonstop LSAT prep and explore why taking breaks and stepping away from your LSAT studies can actually be beneficial. One of the first things that I want to talk about is just these prolonged, never-ending study sessions and how that's giving people a ton of mental fatigue. If you study for 8 hours every day, you're wasting a lot of time, to be honest with you. Those last few hours are probably not effective. They're probably not sinking in, and you don't need the endurance of 8 hours to take the exam. You need about 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I do recommend having at least one good, solid chunk of studying every week. I usually tell people about 4-hour block is the max, and doing 2 of those in a day, you would have to take a pretty good break in between them. The absolute max, like 2-3 hour blocks that are broken up by a couple of hours. But even that, you're starting to push the envelope, and you certainly wouldn't want to do that every day. That may be like one day. If your schedule is like super tight, you got no time Monday through Friday, you got to get it in Saturday and Sunday. All right, you have to make some exceptions for things like that. Be smart about how long you study for. And don't just study for 2 hours every time, right? The test is longer than 2 hours. And if you go in there, you're used to only having to be on your absolute A game for 2 hours, you may find, especially with the added pressure of the test day, that you don't have the endurance to handle it. So go a little bit beyond that. Again, somewhere in the 3 to 4 hours for your big block. And then you can do smaller blocks throughout the week. That's totally fine. But you do want to make sure that you're taking into account endurance as you're building your study schedule. Also, you're going to want to take regular breaks. So don't feel like you have to just keep plowing through nonstop. If you're doing a big day, like a 2-hour break, if you're doing 3 hours of study, 2-hour break, 3 hours of study, you really want to have a good amount of time in there to reset your brain, to like rest your mind, and then to get back after it so that the second block of studying can still be productive. If you're studying and you find that it's just nothing is sinking in, it's time for a break. Some of the things you can do during your break, get some food. Sometimes you're just hungry, and like you're not going to learn a lot if you're hungry. And also you can do physical things. Reset your mind by just working your body. Exercise. If you have a partner who's into it, have sex. That'll certainly get your mind off of things for a little while. But just make sure that you understand that you are a biological being and you have some needs that are outside of just LSAT prep. Make sure that you're taking care of everything that you need to take care of. And if you feel you just can't look at the stuff anymore, take that break and then come back to it when you feel a little more energized. Don't use it to procrastinate, right? But make sure that you are taking care of yourself. And also throughout the process, stay connected with family and friends throughout. Some people will just bury themselves in a hole and study the LSAT and study the LSAT and study the LSAT. And I guess for some people that might work, but usually what we find when people come to us and they're like, okay, I've been locked up for 6 months studying, I'm about to crack. They're mentally not the best that they could be. And for this exam, you need to be the best that you can be. Knowing that to be your best, you need to have meaningful connections in your life. And that includes your friends and your family and your partners. Anything that you need as far as that connection goes, it's really important to maintain that throughout. One of the big things that I always recommend to avoid burnout that I used when I studied is taking one day off per week. That will let you study for weeks and weeks and months without that buildup of burnout. And on that day of the week, you get to do whatever you want except for one thing. The only thing you cannot do on that day is even think about the LSAT. Don't think about it. Don't try to solve a game. Don't dream about it if you can help it. You're taking the day off. The LSAT doesn't exist. This big journey that you're on is on pause for that day. So get outside, meet up with your friends, do whatever you want to do. That's like really fulfilling to you. If it's watching movies, if it's cooking, whatever that is, do that thing and do it to the max. And so you're keeping up with your hobbies, you're keeping up with your family, you're keeping up with your friends. But of course, a lot of your time is being taken up by that LSAT prep. So you have to be pretty intentional with that. So when I was studying, I'll tell you what my schedule looked like. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as the ideal schedule, but it's what I had to work with. So that's what I was doing. I was working 42 hours a week. So that was Monday through Friday. And I'd do like 2 extra hours. On Monday, I'd work a 10-hour shift. And then after that, so that was about 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., then I would go and take classes. Classes would go to like 9:45 or something like that. So I was taking 18 credit hours. So 42 hours a week, 18 credit hours, pretty tough on its own. Add in LSAT studying. So when I would go home, then I'd study the LSAT till usually well after midnight that I'd study for the test. And I do a little bit of studying at work. In between my classes, I'd crack the books. And every little second of the day, I try to fit something in. On the weekends, when Friday night hit, I was out and I wasn't coming back till Sunday. But once I got back on Sunday, then it was, back to the books. But I needed that outlet to just go meet up with my friends, have fun, do things that just took my mind off of the test and where we could just relax and have a good time and enjoy being with my friends and laughing and just living like a little bit of regular life for just a couple of days before I went back to this wild grind that I was on. And a lot of people do find the test is a pretty wild experience. It's a big grind, but it can be enjoyable. You can keep up with the things that are meaningful in your life. Another thing you want to do is just to optimize your studying sessions. So when you're going to sit down and study, focus on a single area and plan on mastering. This is the thing that I want to work on, and I'm going to master this thing. I'm going to look at it from a lot of different angles, a lot of different perspectives. I'm going to really dive deep and focus on this one particular thing. If it's a certain question type in logical reasoning that you're struggling with, or, I want to go through and learn the flaws. I'm going to learn all these logical flaws, and I'm going to be able to apply that on multiple different question types. But I want to really get into flaw questions, or maybe even parallel flaw questions, but get in on that single topic and master it. What you don't want to do is be bouncing around from topic to topic, because one, you'll never go deep enough to really get a great understanding of it. Two, it's much more mentally fatiguing to switch those gears. So if you're switching gears, 5 times, that's going to really fatigue you faster. It's going to lessen the amount that you can absorb, lessen the amount that you can be able to get through in an effective way. Make sure that within your study sessions, you're optimizing them. You're not studying for too long of durations. You're taking your breaks. You're taking a day off per week. You're avoiding burnout. Stay connected with the people you need to stay connected with, and build a schedule that works for you specifically. So let us know, what's your study schedule look like? Have you hit burnout? One surefire sign of someone's burnt out is if your practice test scores are just going down every test that you take. That means you got to take a couple days off. Doesn't mean that you're somehow getting less skilled every time you take a test. You're still just as skilled as you were at the peak. You're just not performing well. So you need to get back to taking care of yourself so you can perform at your highest. Another thing I will mention, make sure, please do not go into test day burnt out. That is the worst thing you can do. So doing 2 practice tests, or that big 3-hour study session, 2-hour break, 3-hour study session the day before the exam, 2 days before the exam, probably not super smart. The week before the exam is all about getting fresh, getting into optimal peak performance. It's not about learning new stuff. You had 6 months to do that. That time is behind you. It's time to sleep super well, get as much sleep as you possibly can, reduce as much stress as you possibly can, and get ready to perform on test day. So those are my tips to really avoid burnout. If you're feeling burnt out right now, this is your permission to take a break, go have some fun, and come back to it. All right, we'll see you on the next one.